I am live in West Virginia. I don't know if you're going to be able to see the helicopter taking off in the distance there or not, Cecil. We got to get a helicopter shot. No, missed it. It was, I don't know if you could hear the helicopter or not, but it's really loud here. I feel like I'm reporting from a war zone or something. And then I got...
It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Okay, good. But I wanted people to get a view of the lawnmower where practice was, or a walkthrough was just a few minutes ago. Texans practice today. It was a walkthrough. The notable things, and you had the same question a lot of people had, is, okay, what about Dameon Pierce and Christian Harris? And Dameon Pierce and Christian Harris participated in the walkthrough. Christian Harris was out doing linebacker drills. I think those guys are both very, very close to coming back. So that's good news on... that's about most of what you can glean from a walkthrough. Nick Chubb wasn't out there today, and he had walked off with a trainer at the end of practice yesterday, but I'm trying hard not to read into things like that too much at this point. It was a walkthrough. They're going to be in pads tomorrow. Then they'll have an off day. Then they'll have the preseason game on Saturday. Next week, they'll have the joint practice with the Panthers on Thursday, and then obviously the preseason game that weekend. So I think we've reached that point, as you and I have talked about multiple times already, where, all right, we've seen some fits and starts from the offense, but really I want to see them put it in action either in the preseason game or in joint practices against a non-Texans defense.
It's going to be interesting. I think that would be the first, not real test, but first honest test for the offense going into the season. Somebody does not know your plays. You have new stuff going on. It'll be new to the Panthers. It'll be new to everybody in practice. So can you execute? Can you execute at a high level, right? And the first time we get to look at a lot of different young rookies, a lot of different guys fighting for spots, going against some real competition. So I'm excited. But I got a question for you, though. Even though it's walkthrough, did Christian Harris go with the first team? Did Dameon Pierce go with the first? I'm assuming Dameon was starting with the first team.
Dameon was out with the ones. I don't think Christian was with the ones. Sean and I were doing our radio show during the walkthrough and doing interviews. Okay. And then I interviewed Danielle Hunter right after the practice. So I was kind of just hustling around, and I wasn't able to really catch up on everything that was going on in the walkthroughs. But Dameon out there at least doing some walkthroughs with the ones. And I would imagine, I don't know if he'll play in the preseason or not. I think in the first preseason game, I think the joint practice, as you know, like teams feel like they can get a lot from those and kind of can get more reps in a safer environment than in the preseason. So I think we might start to maybe get a feel more for how they feel about the depth chart when we see the joint practices versus Carolina. But if Nick Chubb's not going, then right now I think Dameon's probably the guy they're looking at as their main all-purpose guy behind Joe Mixon and Nick Chubb.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm interested to see these linebackers. That's why I asked about Christian Harris.
Yeah.
Because it's a deep room. You brought in E.J. Speed. Henry To'oTo'o played really well last year, especially in a lot of games. He played better as the season went on. Of course, you got Azeez, who's already slotted in, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many guys that you can compete for one spot. And Christian showed us so much potential. And he made huge plays in his second year. So I'm interested to see how it's going to go.
And there's also still, they brought in Nick Neiman, who's mostly a special teams guy, but he's a guy, E.J. Speed early in his career was just a special teams guy and then ended up working his way into a starting role in Indianapolis. So there's even more competition than the guys that you kind of mentally slot in there. Jamal Hill, the draft pick from last year, he was a safety. Yeah, that's right. We had talked about him last time. He was a safety in college until his final year, and he's got some potential. So they've got options there. The thing that's really interesting is, Darrell Taylor, I told you, the defensive end, he moves like a linebacker. And I think they might end up being able to do some kind of, I don't want to say exotic stuff, but when it comes to trying to figure out a way to cover on the back end, but also have guys who are physical up front, I think guys like Danielle Hunter and Darrell Taylor and some of these other guys might be used a little bit more loosely. Sometimes, remember when Jadeveon Clowney would be off the ball? And it was usually part of a pass rush package, but Clowney was good at it, but he also wasn't really a great athlete in space, where I think they've got some guys who are pretty good in space. So I think they might get kind of funky with some of that stuff.
How big is Taylor?
He's probably listed at like 260, but he's not as big as Will Anderson. I think he's more of a... He's probably like a 6'2", 255,
Okay.
like Dwight Freeney maybe or something like that. He's like not a
hell of a name you threw out there now.
I mean, it's in terms of body size. Yeah. But when he's here on a 1-year deal, so I think that the defense has become a destination for guys that feel like, all right, have a conversation with the team. Are they actually going to use me? And maybe I re-sign with the Texans, or maybe I ended up getting a better deal elsewhere. So I think they're planning on using him, because the deal they gave him, I think he could have gotten a better deal somewhere else. If he wanted just the most money possible. I think he's kind of looking at this as a prove-it year, and the Texans' defensive line rotates. So, like, he's done some things in camp where when he's slanting down inside as part of a blitz, I mean, he gets matched up one-on-one on a center or a guard and with any kind of space, and he's dusting them. And you're like, partly, okay, should I be worried about the offensive line? Yes! Don't stop worrying about the offensive line. But there's also a lot of, the defense, I'm trying not to get too excited. I'm trying not to, I'm not trying to count my chickens before they've hatched. But the defense just is so athletic and so ferocious and so aggressive and just so dialed in on the back end, and they've got so many athletes up front that I told Sean Pendergast this morning, it felt to me a little bit like the Ravens back in 1999 were a pretty good defense, and then in 2000 when they won the Super Bowl, it was just like they turned it up. And it was just a whole different level. Like it feels like that to me. And I was doing that I was a divisional opponent of the Ravens at the time. So I knew they were a good team and they're a solid physical team and everything. But then Ray Lewis came into his own, and it was just a whole different deal.
You mentioned Dwight Freeney and the 2000 Ravens all in one paragraph.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm not going to compare the offense to the greatest show on turf just yet. Okay? I've got a limit. I've got a limit for my aspirations. As far as practice and how it went yesterday, because I know we had talked about Nick Chubb and where is he. Yesterday, it's not like the offense was great, but they improved a lot on what they had done on Monday. And the biggest and most encouraging thing was that the offensive line, they got good push in the run game at times. So there were some times where Nick Chubb, he might not be the quintessential Nick Chubb. He might not be at the peak of his abilities, but he still has vision and he still has strength. And there were times where when the blocking was there and the play was run right, he bounced one play outside for probably like between a 15 and 30-yard gain. But then he had another couple. I almost got more excited about some of the runs that looked like they might have been 4- or 5-yard runs. And you know how it is when you're not going to the ground and it's not full contact. It's kind of hard to tell exactly how good an inside run is from watching from the end zone, but you could see that it was blocked well and that they got positive yardage. So if Chubb isn't peak Chubb, but if you had to rely on him and Dameon Pierce because Joe Mixon was injured, I think they're going to be, if the offensive line can get that push, they can keep the sticks moving. They can stay on schedule. They're not wasting downs by running for a 1-yard loss on first down. I think Chubb could still be that guy. And then anything on top of that is obviously going to be a bonus. But that alone, just having a consistent rushing attack, would be a big improvement over last year.
That's one thing I think Chubb over his career is kind of known for, is his consistency.
Yeah.
He's the same runner every single time. So even if he, like you mentioned, he's probably lost a step, or he doesn't look as explosive as, like you called him peak Chubb or prime Chubb. If he can get you positive yards, and then you bring in Dameon Pierce for a more explosive guy, that's not a bad 1-2 punch. If Chubb can, get 4 or 5, he can be consistent with his running. Because I think Dameon has an opportunity here.
Yeah.
And Dameon Pierce has a real opportunity, because I think this may be the offense that fits him more, where he's going downhill. He don't got to read a bunch of stuff and try to figure out where to cut back. He can just go downhill, right where we're trying to go, where there's A gap, B gap, C gap, whatever that stuff is. So I think this can be a decent 1-2 while Joe was out. It's intriguing.
And Jawar Jordan has shown some good flashes in camp, but Woody Marks, the draft pick, he's shown some good flashes too. And I think with CJ, and he spoke at the podium today and said some good things. But it's all about, can you get to that point when you're using the running backs in the passing game where you're not thinking of it as a check down, where, okay, I see what the coverage is. I'm going to hit the running back now because I know what we've got matched up versus this coverage probably isn't ideal, and I don't want to sit around waiting for everything to develop. So I hit the running back, and he can catch the ball while the linebackers are still getting back in their drops, and you get positive yardage. I think CJ 100% believes in that philosophy, and that's like the old Tom Brady rules. He's got a lot going on pre-snap now compared to what he used to, and I think it's just going to take time and getting the muscle memory of that whole pre-snap operation. So I was out yesterday talking to Pat Kerwin from Sirius NFL. He used to be a scout in the league for a long time, and he's been on Sirius NFL for a long time now, where he gets to talk to a lot of people around the league, and they go to camps all over the place. And the one thing that he noticed about the Texans, two things. One is that for a new offense, it's a clean pre-snap operation. Like, Caley's been hammering the fundamentals, the execution, all of that. And you're not seeing a lot of false starts. You're not seeing a lot of just kind of the nonsense. When you have to start a drill over because the offense can't get a snap off. I haven't seen any of that. So I think they're doing well in that regard. CJ's got to keep getting comfortable with this. But then the other big part of it is talking to Pat Kerwin. He said he went to 6 camps in a row this year that are all planning on using a fullback this year. And he said, like, he can't remember the last time it was like that because, the fullback was becoming almost a relic of a bygone era for so long. But what he's hearing and when he's talking to coaches is that, man, you look at the way defenses have been playing now because they're so concerned with stopping the pass that they've become really vulnerable to the run. And then all of a sudden teams like the Ravens and the Eagles can really exploit the run game, and they think it's worth paying running backs. And I think the pendulum's kind of swinging back a little bit, back to where the run game is more relevant because a lot of defenses just aren't set up to stop it. So with CJ being involved in the run game and the run checks and the mic set and the mic points and all that, that's the part where I think he can really come into his own. And I think he realizes and understands, okay, the quarterback is responsible for the run game too. And that if we want to have just not whether we want to have a good passing offense or a good rushing defense, if we just want to have a good if we just want to have a good offense in general, we gotta attack it from all elements. And they're giving him the license and the ability to be a part of that this year.
Well, it brings music to my ears because the first thing I heard was clean football. Clean offensive football. Like, that's the basic. That's the foundation. Just lining up correctly, knowing the snap count, understanding, like you said, pre-snap motions and all that stuff. It's going to take some time for the pre-snap for CJ to get it down. But to play clean football, that's a really big deal. And I don't know if we've seen that the last few years. Like, it's been mistake after mistake after mistake early on when it comes to pre-snap, right? But to have that is huge. Now, to hit your point on running, if you look at the good teams, the Eagles, they were able to pound the football.
Yeah.
And won a Super Bowl. You look at the Ravens, as you mentioned, the 49ers, how they use their fullback and how he's involved in the game and all the success they had over the last 5-6 years is needed. And I think no matter what you do, especially with the defenses adjusting to the passing game, bringing nickels in, all this type of stuff, if you're able to run the football and keep the defense honest, man, you in some good shape.
It is, and
everything for CJ.
It's gotten to the point. I feel like it's an epidemic, Cecil, where these young offensive coordinators, they make a name for themselves by being brilliant pass game coordinators, and that's what it's all about. And it's gotten to the point now, though, where so many of them, they're these young whiz kid whiteboard warriors, but they really don't understand the nuts and the bolts of the run game. And they kind of almost think that it's just, we'll pass to set up the run, and then all you got to do is draw up a run play, and then those guys will block them. And then you pair that with the fact that, college offensive linemen are coming out they're not as trained and ready for the NFL game as they used to be. A lot of these guys have never been in a 3-point stance in their life. You got offensive linemen who from Pop Warner on up through high school and college have never been in a 3-point stance. So there's a lot of the finer elements of the fundamentals that you gotta almost teach. The stuff that you used to teach in high school, you got to teach in the NFL now. And that's where I like I like the concept of Nick Caley. He's still got to prove that he can do it, but he's a guy he's comes from a system in New England where they very much, appreciated the finer elements of blocking, and he's coached tight ends and been a part of both run game and pass protection. Obviously, his time in the Rams, I like that in theory. The part that you're not going to necessarily see offensive brilliance right now during camp when they're trying to hammer the fundamentals and you're trying to have a clean operation. That means they're probably also going to be kind of vanilla, and they're going against a defense that's just a psychotic chalkboard of mayhem, and they're doing it really, really well. And it's not an excuse. It's just that I think it's an explanation at this point. Yeah, at some point you want to see him take that next step, but I'm not panicking at this point. I'm still concerned about some of the individuals on the offensive line, but I would say just even here in West Virginia, I haven't seen as many instances where these last couple years I watch the offensive line and I'm trying to figure out what the hell they're even trying to do. Because you got one guy who's blocking like it's outside zone. You got three other guys who's blocking like it's inside zone, and then you got one guy in a pass set. And I'm like, all right, there's a disconnect here. Something's wrong, and I can't figure out whose fault it is because there's multiple things wrong. I haven't seen that, and they've had some trouble with blitz pickup, but I think. If your expectation for right now or what your hope is that, okay, can you be a clean operation? I think they're further along this year than they were last year. FanDuel has the Texans as a 1.5-point underdog to the Vikings in the preseason game this week, and I know that might sound a little favorable given how the Texans played against the Vikings last year. The key thing is this: J.J. McCarthy is going to play, and if any of the Texans starters play on defense, or even if the backups, the way they're playing, are playing, I think they're going to make it really, really tough for J.J. McCarthy. And then on the Texans side of things, Davis Mills has looked really good in camp so far, and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll have formed a really nice connection with Davis Mills. So I expect to see a pretty good version of Davis Mills in this preseason game. So I like the Texans with that 1.5-point underdog.
I think it's a great start, honestly. If you have a clean operation, clean football, clean pre-snap and everything that's going on, you're off to a good start. The offense will always be slower than the defense, especially when you're learning new concepts, new plays. You have a new O-line coach and a new OC who's never called before. So I think some patience is needed, and I think next week will be a huge week. Honestly, this Saturday to me is big because this is Nick Caley's first time calling the game. Even though it's preseason, it's still the adjustment of having the headset on. You are talking to the quarterback. You're calling the play. You're getting adjustments from the guys upstairs. You're getting a feel for how regular season is going to go. Right now, obviously, it ramps up in the regular season. It ramps up even more in the playoffs, as you know. But this is his first time being able to call plays. It's a big deal to him. Like, I wonder how much he's going to. Obviously, he's preparing, but how much he's going to put into it as far as game planning and making adjustments and doing these things, because this is his first time doing it too. Yeah.
Oh, and I guess, I wanted to ask you about that. And before I do, I think that part of it, the pre-snap operation that I probably should have emphasized, was that it's they're getting up to the line of scrimmage. They're getting into the huddle, out of the huddle, getting up to the line of scrimmage. And these are the little stupid things that you notice and pick up on. When they break the huddle, they're doing it the way a high school football coach wants their guys to break a huddle. You're breaking the huddle, you're getting up on the line, you're getting in position. Like, there's no just kind of lazing your way up there. And so CJ's got time to figure it out and adjust. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because, defensively it's never as complicated as it is offensively. Have you ever had a situation where you had a new offensive coordinator and you realized in the first game or whatever that, oh man, this operation is just not quite what it needs to be yet?
Absolutely. So I had 3 offensive coordinators in my 4 years in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And you can tell early on if we had a good operation pre-snap or not. We had a good operation just in general. Like, if we had good plays coming, what was our tempo to the line of scrimmage? What were we better at? Were we better at going fast? The communication from the sideline to the quarterback. Is that frustrating for the quarterback? Is he overthinking? Is he trying to get it in and switching the play last second? Because you only get, 40 seconds in between, and they got to be able to get to the line of scrimmage, see the defense, make adjustments, make the right run call or pass protection. So early on, you can feel it as a player. Like, you can feel like, hey, we got to tighten this up. Or you can feel, hey, we're in the right space. We just got to keep working at it. So you definitely feel it either or. in the preseason and then going into regular season.
Yeah, that's it's because I was on a defense once where it wasn't even a first-time defensive coordinator. It was his first year with the team. It was Richard Smith with the Texans in 2006, and the first game we played, it was. It was such a clustered bleep. We couldn't get the right personnel on the field. They'd call nickel. I was a nose tackle. I'd run off the field, and then all of a sudden it'd be like, no, base. I'd run back on the field. I got on the field. I'm out of breath by that point because I've run a full half gasser as a fat man. And then all of a sudden, you look to the sideline, nickel, and I'm sprinting off to the sideline, trying to get to the sideline before the ball is snapped. And it was like that the whole first game. And that was the guy who had been a defensive coordinator before. But that's the kind of. It's a kind of mayhem that you don't see when you're watching on television, and you wouldn't even realize watching in the stands. But it's when people are focused on a whole bunch of stuff without putting the foundation in place first of just having a clean operation. I had a message. Hannah McNair was about to give a message for me to give to you, but then I got pulled away from her. But she was in the middle of telling me I didn't realize that you and her son Robert are. She said you guys are like this. Like these are. What's that?
That's the baseball team they play on. That's that.
Oh, all right. Are you? Your son and his son play together?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like best friends. They slept over each other's house last night. So
all right.
They're like inseparable. It's kind of weird, but they're.
Oh, really? She was probably going to tell me something good too, and then Sean pulled me away. Dang it! I'll ask him tomorrow.
That's fun.
I told you I was interviewing Danielle Hunter, and you guys can check that out on my personal YouTube later today. But I was excited to talk to him because he's just such a technician. He's just such a pure pass rusher, But he also this offseason, he said at a press conference that he actually gained some weight in the offseason.
Who did?
And Danielle Hunter did.
Oh.
And you look at Danielle and he's like 6% body fat and already leaned out, and he's been in the league for like 10 years. You don't expect him to say he gained weight. So, and I wasn't at that press conference, so I asked him today, what'd you do to gain weight? And it surprised me, and I got excited about it because he said he did pull-ups. Like I was expecting to say like more squats or something like that with legs and everything. He said he just started doing pull-ups, weighted pull-ups, and he just started banging those out, and he got bigger all around. And I felt for a high school or a middle school football coach like you, I feel like that's the one thing that kids never want to do. They don't want to work their back. They feel like, oh, it's all bench and legs and everything. Okay. But you build a foundation with your back, and it makes you so solid, and it does add a whole lot of mass. And you can imagine Danielle, he said, his coaches, he just kept adding weight, and he just kept doing pull-ups, and he kind of got into it in the offseason. So I don't think he was even planning on gaining weight. He just did it by focusing on pull-ups more than he used to.
Jeez, he's already so chiseled already. Like I'm not trying to glaze over him, but he's like, God,
no, dude, it's so hard. He's sitting there. I'm interviewing him, and he's wearing a sleeveless shirt, and I'm like, don't look at his biceps. Don't look at his biceps. Don't look at his biceps.
It's hard, man.
Up here. He's up here. I respect you as a person, Danielle. It's not. It's about you as a person and a pass rusher.
Oh, man, that's funny.
I always like to, when I read biographies or articles about really successful people, I always like to try to choose the advice or the example that they set that I know people aren't going to follow, because there's always something where it's like, man, one of the keys to their success is something that people they casually ignore it. And like for Belichick in his book, he said the four most important words for a leader are, I bleeped that up. He used a different word, but he said, I bleeped that up. And it's how important it is to just, hey, when you screw up or when you make a mistake, be sure that everybody in the organization sees that you're accountable for it. And it doesn't excuse the mistake, but that they see you rectify it. And you think about that, and like people like young managers or young football coaches and everything, that's a really hard thing sometimes to just, admit that you made a mistake, but you gain so much respect and credibility, and you put that expectation on everybody else that like, yeah, you better own. That's what he said when he was talking about players who make mistakes. The worst thing possible is the player who doesn't want to admit that he made a mistake, or who's got an excuse or something. You want the player who's like, yeah, coach, I screwed that up. And I'll fix it. I'll get on it.
That's strong. I got a question for you, and maybe
So I think the advice Danielle's going to or I would take from that is, do your pull-ups. But nobody likes doing pull-ups. Yeah, except for wrestlers who are good at them. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. What was your question?
Did you like doing pull-ups? Did you do pull-ups?
I actually liked it because I was kind of freakishly strong for a bigger guy. I could do, like, when I weighed 315 pounds, I could do like 15 pull-ups. So I kind of took pride in it.
Oh, wow.
And I had a wrestling background, but I also, like, I could tell where it helped my game. Where a lot of guys, because there's a punch, but then there's also a pull on a snatch and everything. So when you're playing football, so I liked them.
I liked them too. I thought it made your back look great. Like, I just
you get that V.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's what you got to sell your players on. Is that you get that classic V.
Got to convince them. One last question for me about Cam Robinson. Did he go through walkthrough yesterday?
I did not notice. Like I said, we were doing interviews during the walkthrough, so okay. I don't know. Okay. Now, the important thing about that, though, is, Caserio had told Sean and I last week that they thought that by the time of the Minnesota game, which is this weekend, that they'd have a pretty good feel for what they wanted their offensive line to be. I think that timetable might have gotten pushed back because the day Cam Robinson got injured, he was going to be going with the twos that day. So they were already going to shuffle it around a little bit, and I think that, I don't know. I think there's a lot of competition out there right now.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, well, don't forget Hannah's question tomorrow. I'm curious.
I will. I'll get it.
Funny.
I'll get it. I'll get it.
Might be something funny.
And you and I next time on Monday around 2:00 Eastern, 1:00 Central, we'll have our reaction to the preseason game.
Yes, sir. Sounds
all
good.
right. Oh, hey, and this is the Believe in Texans podcast brought to you by FanDuel.